Penetration, it's all about the bullet design. And I've heard people say stuff like that, you know, that good penetration is about the bullet design more than it is the actual load. So I thought, you know, I'm going to do an interesting test here today because one of my Patreon supporters, Hillbilly Scholar, sent over a bunch of different bullets, 44 caliber, 10 millimeter in the past, 38s, and he did want to see what a standard pressure 38 special load would do. So I did load up some standard pressure 38 special loads with some hard cast bullets he made, as well as some standard pressure 44 special loads. And he sent me over a couple of nice books for the lineman hand loading here, because these are lineman cast bullets. So our 38 is a lineman 357 446, and that is the 165 grain casting, but because they're hard cast, they actually weigh out to 157 grains. And I used 3.4 grains of tight group powder, overall length 1.45, and with the 44 special, that is the 429 360 mold. That is the 235 grain cast, and they came out to 232 actual grains. And with that, I got 4.8 grains of tight group, 1.495 overall length there. So what I want to do today, you know, these are very lowly loaded. Like the 44 is like barely over 10,000 psi. It's a very lowly loaded bullet, so it's not going to be anywhere near like a 45 auto. Same with the 38 special. That's not going to be anywhere near the power of a 9mm. So I thought, how about I compare them to 38 special to 9mm and compare the 44 special to the 45 ACP full metal jackets, because those are known for decent penetration. 124 grain American Eagle 9mm and our 230 grain Federal Champion full metal jacket. I use my 5-inch autos to do that comparison compared to my 4-inch revolvers, and we'll see if there's, you know, a big difference and the actual penetration when we get. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time, and then for every one of these tests I'm going to do my real world simulation here. And what I have is 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back, and then some more clear ballistics. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real living target. If we go through that back rib simulation and we go 3 inches beyond that, that definitely would indicate that we would pass through an average size individual. And it is likely with a lot of these rounds that could pass through, but that's really what we're looking for here. We're looking for a really good penetrating round, and this will just kind of give us a guideline of how much penetration we got. So we'll do that ballistic gel test, and then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, so I'm just going to run a few rounds of this 9mm 124 grain FMJ just to kind of get a baseline of how powerful 9mm is. 1048, 1068, 1080. So now I'm going to run our standard pressure 38 special 157 grain semi-wadcutters. See how much velocity these things have. .759, 801, 817, 805, 799. So pretty low velocity there, right around the 800 feet per second mark. So a bit less powerful than 9mm. Now let's try our 45 auto. Let's get a few rounds of that. 230 grain full metal jacket. Let's see how this does. .764, 799, 822. So that is a 230 grain, right around 800 feet per second. Now these 44 specials are 232 grain. But the pressure is very, very low on these. So I'm not even sure if we'll hit 700 feet per second. But let's see what we get here. .690, 735, 733, 722, 731. So yeah, a little bit less velocity, similar bullet weight. So in theory, you would think more energy would make more penetration, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the bullet design makes a difference. So let's hit our real world simulation ballistics gel block and see how these all compare to each other. All right, first up we'll try our 9mm full metal jacket, and then I'm going to compare that 38 special to it, being that they're similar diameters. So I'm going to get pretty close on this just because I want to make accurate shots in there. So this is our real world simulation, 4 layers of sweatshirt material. I know that's redundant, but I like to stay consistent from test to test to test every time I do these tests, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum. 16 more inches of clear ballistics and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back. You gotta remember, clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so whatever you see in there is gonna be about half that far in a living creature. So let's see what we get here with our 9mm full metal jacket. All right, went out of the block. Let's do it again. All right. Let's hit that with our 38 special, our very low end standard pressure. Let's go take a look. All right, so with this, you know, we can see a difference here, and power definitely makes a difference with this. You know, and this is not my statement that you know, it's all about the bullet. I've heard that quite a bit, and what I think it is there's a little bit of a combination of truths between, you know, what people say and reality, and there's a lot of minutia in the middle of that. Like, if I were to put this 38 special bullet at the same energy, that 9mm, I think it would penetrate further. But in this test here, our 9mm full metal jacket definitely penetrated further here. So interesting. With our 9mm full metal jacket, we have a penetration of about 26 inches. That's pretty good. And that actually would indicate that that would pass through an average size individual. Going through back ribs, going another 3 inches is likely the size from a front on shot. So 22 inches would be, you go past that, it could pass through and be at 26 inches. That's a lot of penetration. But our 38 special, we stopped right at that rib simulation of 19 inches. It cracked out the back a little bit, so maybe I'll say 19.5 total. So that would actually be a pretty good self-defense round, to be honest here, because it didn't really penetrate that far. So if you're looking at solid bullets here, it definitely looks like, you know, the 9mm is going to be a little better for, you know, dangerous animals potentially, depending on the animal, and the 38 is going to be better and a solid for just basic self-defense. So let's try our 45 auto versus our 44 special and see how those compare. All right, a lot more bullet mass here, 230 grain versus 230 grain, and we have a bit more velocity with the 45, not a lot, but a bit more. Let's see how this does with our full metal jacket. All right. Now our 44 special, it's a little bit weaker. Let's see how this does. Let's go take a look. Oh, and again, our semi-wadcutters didn't go as far, and that's a standard pressure semi-wadcutter. So yeah, our 45 over penetrated a little bit, as where our 44 like stopped at that back rib simulation, which was pretty much perfect penetration, to be honest here. I don't even see that bullet in there. Oh, it's laying down there, that's why. So it just went through that rib simulation and is laying down right there. Very hard cast bullet, very nice bullet overall. So again, you know, my original question there is answered a little bit. In my testing here, it looks like power matters a little bit more than bullet design, which is a little different than what people have said to me. But I'm also really pleased with what I'm seeing, because we're seeing that these standard pressure 38 and 44 with a Semi-Wadcutter are going exactly as far as we want them to go, and do good damage. So our 45 auto, we went to about 23 3/4. That's just on that verge of possibly passing through. And our 44, we went right to that rib simulation, and we cracked it. So I'm gonna say 20.5 inches or so, pretty similar, or 19.5, I should say, 19.5 inches, pretty similar to the 38 Special. The difference here is that the energy dump in the first 3 inches has greater damage with the 44 than the 45. The track along here is much bigger with the 44. Right about here with the 45, it starts tumbling. Our 44 did not tumble at all. So it looks like overall, all these are okay, but if I was going to use these rounds for self-defense, I would definitely pick the 38 and the 44 over Full Metal Jacket. That's not to say that with Jacket of Hollow Points, 9mm and 45 aren't as good or better, but with solid bullets, it looks like the 38 and the 44 Special with these Semi-Wadcutters are just perfect for getting consistent penetration. As where Full Metal Jackets, they're okay, but they go a little bit deep. So interesting overall. Let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a closer look at these bullets. Then I'll shoot our steel and see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets. Here's our Full Metal Jackets, our 9mm and our 45. Yeah, basic Full Metal Jackets. Actually, our 45 seems to be a total metal jacket instead of a full metal jacket, which is more of a plated style bullet, but it's fine for this type of testing. Basic Full Metal Jackets. Now these bullets that Hillbilly Scholar loaded are really fantastic here. There is our 38 and our 44. Really not much deformation of those bullets at all, because they are a nice solid cast, and that really makes a big difference for getting that straight line penetration. The penetration was so straight line that it actually pulled this patch of sweatshirt material all the way to out the back of the first ballistic block, 19 inches through. So that's telling you that's going through straight to be able to do that. That's pushing that patch straight through. So a nice straight line penetration, but not over penetrating, while having that Semi-Wadcutter edge there. That's the best of all worlds, really, when you're talking about self-defense. If you're talking a low recoiling round, just fantastic overall. It's like a Wadcutter, but that Semi-Wadcutter nose pushes it a little bit deeper, and it goes in a straighter line because of that, but you still get a lot of the effects of the Wadcutter. Just a really good bullet overall. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target. So I don't have a ton of those 9mm rounds left, so I'm just gonna focus on the revolvers, my hand loads here, to test these out and to see how they fire for me. So 14 yards, I'm just gonna get a sight picture and pop off these rounds as fast as I think I can hit the target, just to kind of see how they feel for me. So here is our 38 Special standard pressure, 157 grain. Those shoot pretty good. Now here's our 44 Special, 232 grain. All right, so I'm pulling those kind of high. That could just be me trying to fire fast, but they went over the target a little bit, and I've seen that sometimes with rounds that you're getting sub like 750. It's a weird phenomenon where they're moving so slow that by the time that shot actually breaks, you actually get a little bit of gas coming out from the cylinder, which raises the muzzle a little bit before the bullet fully clears the bore. And that's probably what I'm seeing with this, because that velocity was so low. I've seen it over and over again, even with factory ammo. So that's something I got to keep in mind, that they're moving out of that barrel so slow. I will have to aim a little bit lower. In fact, let me try a few more right now at 14 yards, aiming lower, and see how they hit. All right, I'm gonna try again. This time I'm gonna aim like probably 4 or 5 inches from the bottom of that target and see how these things will do now. Yeah, So just something to keep in mind there with the really slow rounds, but at very close range that won't matter. But let me back it up. I want to do 75 yards just for fun, just for slinging these for fun, and see how these do from that distance. All right, 75 yards from the target, really just for fun at this point. So I just want to see how these things will shoot. Doing some slow fire at the 75 yards, kind of see where they impact. Have some fun here trying to hit that target. So 38 special. Let's see how this does. Just gonna aim center mass to see where they're going. A little bit high. All right, not the best shooting on my part. But I'll keep going here. Some more of these 38 specials. It seemed like I had to aim just a hair to the right, but that could just be me today. Because I was missing and I aimed to the right a little bit, and it seemed like then I would hit. I'll keep doing that. Center mass, aiming just a hair right. Not so great. Now our 44 special. Now what will probably happen with this is that effect will happen, it'll raise it up. But because this type of round will drop pretty well over that distance, what'll happen is you'll aim center mass, it should automatically jump out of the barrel and then already be aiming high technically, and then come back down on target. So let me just fire one single action, aiming center, see where this hits. Oh, I don't know where that hit. I'm going to struggle with these a little bit here, so I'm not sure where they're going. Yeah, I cannot even tell where they're impacting, to be honest. So I'm struggling a bit here with these. Because at this point, 5 rounds in, I still have no clue where they're hitting. So I can't adjust yet because I can't see any impacts in the snow. So I'm gonna keep trying, try to figure this out. All right, so I think they all must be going higher than where my vision is even seeing, because I aimed above the target by like 2 feet and then I saw an impact like 15, 16 feet high. So let me aim really low. All right, that's gonna drive me nuts unless I go get some more rounds. So I'm gonna get some more rounds and keep trying to at least hit this target at least once. All right, I walked up on that target. I was not able to see any impacts in the snow, at least not below the target. So they would have to be hitting high, like really high, where I'm not seeing where they're impacting. So the effect of that muzzle rise is really, really big with this particular load. So I'll keep aiming low. I'm just gonna aim really low and see if I can find where it's going. Still cannot tell. The snow is just wet enough today, it's not kicking up when it's hitting, so I haven't a clue where those are going. Alright, that time I finally saw where one was going. I was aiming center mass, and it went above the target by at least 10 feet. So I guess I'll aim 10 feet below the target. But it was centered, it wasn't to the right or left. I'll aim about 10 feet low center. We're getting closer. There we go. So I aimed roughly 6 feet low and center. So now I know where to hold. So that's the type of, distance they are jumping up. They're jumping up real high from that recoil. I'll keep going. All right, so I'll quit there, else we'll be out here all day with this. So interesting overall. So really what it is going on with this is that velocity is so slow at a round that's like 10,000 psi that it's just moving way too slowly that you get that huge muzzle jump, muzzle rise. I've seen exactly the same effect when I've reloaded 38 Super Police, like 200, 215 grain, even 230 grain lead round nose for 38 Special. You'll get the exact same thing going on where it's like way up there. And the only way to alleviate that would be to load it above standard pressure, at least the max charge in these books, because this I pretty much went to the max. And being at sub 700 feet a second, it's just too slow. Now if we push that bullet to like 800 feet per second, it'll act pretty much normally. So it's just an interesting effect overall. But looking at these loads overall, if we're talking self-defense up close and personal, these are not great penetrating rounds like I thought they would be at the standard pressure velocity. They're actually perfect penetrating rounds for self-defense. So that's really a great option for someone that wants a really low recoil like 38 Special, because that Semi-Wadcutter is going to go on a straight line. It's going to do way more damage than a Full Metal Jacket or a lead round nose or anything like that, and it'll do more damage than a hollow point that doesn't expand. So it really is a good option overall for a standard pressure 38 Special. And I do think I'm going to test these in the snub at some point, the 38s, and that should do even better out of a snub because it will just penetrate just a hair less, which is still more than enough penetration. So overall, a 38 is really a fantastic load. Nothing wrong with this 44 load. It's just that you gotta be close to hit your target with it, or else it's gonna jump way over the target from that low velocity. So thank you again to Hellbilly Scholar for sending the books, the bullets, and all of that to do these loads. I really appreciate that. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.